Hi everyone, it's Artie. I need to adjust my lighting a little bit. Um, Maybe it's a little better right here. Anyways, I wanted to do this quick video of some flute playing. I'm gonna just put it right there. I'm not using any fancy equipment today because I just thought whatever. So I am going to be showcasing two flutes. I recently reached out to flute specialists and I will be trialing these two flutes, which are vintage flutes. This is a Deford, Deford 10B, and an Armstrong 80B, which to flute players, if you guys are really familiar with these brands, Deford, I guess really no longer makes flutes. And this is a more vintage model of the current 80B model from Armstrong. I personally prefer their more vintage flutes because they just have a more unique sound. The coloring is nicer and the weight is a lot nicer. There's definitely a weight difference between these two flutes. So I'm just going to talk a quick thing about the specs and then I'm going to play both of them. The selections that I'm going to be playing are excerpts from Nielsen's Concerto and the Benedictus from Mass in B minor by Bach. So the specs on these two flutes. So these two flutes are not extremely special. They're as far as like the fancier kind of stuff that we have nowadays. They're just very plain Jane flutes. They both have the same exact specs. So they're both inline G. They both have B foots. The Armstrong, this one doesn't have a gizmo key. So I'll take a little close up right there. The Deford does, and it's a little nub right there. It's kind of cute. And the big difference between actually these two flutes is that the Deford is a thin wall sterling silver flute. It's completely sterling silver from head to toe and mechanism. And then the Armstrong 80B is a silver tubing with a plated mechanism, and I believe that the tubing is the standard 0.16 wall thickness. And so you're going to definitely hear a difference of color. One of the things that is really interesting as well is the lip plates and the size of the embouchure holes. I'm going to play just quick excerpts of both pieces, and then I'll let people generate their own responses. I am trying to buy one of these flutes, and if not one of these, I'll definitely be searching for more. I ideally want to get something that is just something that I can use on a backup, and I am planning on getting back into playing some Latin jazz and salsa. So I was even thinking about just a thin wall instrument in general. So without further ado, I'm going to play the opening of the Nielsen, and then I will also play a couple of little long tones and articulation things, and I'm also going to play a little bit of the Benedictus from Bach. So here we go. So I'm going to start off with the Deford. Sorry about the sticky pads there. And then let's do the Benedictus. Okay, let me do a couple little long tone stuff with this flute. Let's do some rapid articulation. Okay. So let's move on to, actually, let me see. Adrian asked, are these student flutes? So I want to say that the Deford, this particular flute, the one that I just played, this one is, I want to say it's more like an advanced amateur flute, or even a little bit more than the advanced amateur. My understanding about this flute in particular was that these were kind of made to like compete with like Haynes at the time, like Haynes and Powell at the time. They were a little bit more sophisticated in the sound coloring, as far as like flutes go. So like you had the Artley Wilkins, for example, was created to compete with Haynes and Powell. So I imagine this would have been along the same lines. It does, for me, have a little bit more of a color difference from just your regular student flute. But let me get to playing the Armstrong next, and then I'll answer all the questions in detail. But just so everyone knows, whoever's joining, I am testing out two flutes right now, which are a vintage 80B and a Deford 10B. And both have similar specs. They have the same exact specs. So this one's they're both inline G. There's no C sharp trill. I mean, I think this one was made like maybe in the early 80s or even in the late 70s. And this one has no gizmo. So it actually kind of reminds me of the old Haynes without the gizmo. Which, you know what? I have noticed that as I've gotten older, I'm kind of liking the fact that my flutes don't have gizmos. So maybe my next flute won't have a gizmo. Who knows? But anyways, let me play this particular flute. And if it's a little out of tune, I am sorry that it doesn't meet our current standards. But yes. Also, one of the things that I wanted to point out, I don't know if this camera can capture it, but right here, a lot of flutes back in this period had a line on the barrel and lines on the head joint. You can faintly see them. There's three little lines right here. And that helped flute players line up their head joints correctly and will actually guide you to how far in or how far out you can roll your head joint. But for the sake of intents and purposes, I'm just going to line it up just slightly out of the center line, because that's how I normally play my flute. So I'm going to play the same two excerpts that I did on the 10B on the 80B. Sorry, numbers, models. So the two excerpts are the opening to Nielsen's Concerto for flute and orchestra, and the other excerpt is the Benedictus from Mass in B minor. How about I give that one just a little bit, another whirl? Okay, let's do some long tones. And rapid tonguing. So just so everyone gets an idea, I'm going to play the um, this magical 80B again. So again, so one of the bigger differences, I don't know if you noticed, is that this one tends to have a much more darker, richer sound, and the 10B by Deford is much lighter and a little bit more fluid. It does take a little bit more effort for me to get some of the richer overtones out of this flute out, and I just think it's maybe I'm not used to it because my personal flute is a Burkhart gold on silver, so it's quite dark and very rich and has lots of overtones. And the lip plate configuration is a little different. Mine's is much more squared and there's a lot more overcutting. So it's easier for me to achieve a cleaner articulation on this one. It's a little bit harder. I feel like the articulation comes out just a little bit more rounded, even though I'm using a much more pronounced articulation. So in any case, I'll play. Let's see. Let's play something a little bit more lyrical. Not that. Not that. Oh, perfect. The Larsen Minuet, and I was actually working on this with my teacher Carlos a couple months ago. So let's try this one. And now the 80B. So those are the two flutes that I am currently trying. Again, they are the Deford 10B, which is sterling silver throughout, inline G, B foot with gizmo. Again, it's thin wall. And then the Armstrong 80B, and it's a sterling silver tube. So head joint, body and foot. No gizmo on this one. Inline G as well. A little bit heavier wall on this one, so definitely a lot darker, richer sound. So I'm going to ask the viewers to let me know what you guys think. Which one do you prefer? There is a difference in price. This flute is about $6.95, which is the uh, the Deford, the thin wall, and the Armstrong is $7.95, I believe. So yeah. Oh, that's what I was gonna say before I end the video. So my friend Adrian had asked if these were student flutes. Um, it's yes and no. Um, they are, well, the 80B currently is advanced student flute. Um, I will say that flutes during this time were a little bit better made. The construction was definitely better. Um, there was more attention to the detail and the sound that came out of these instruments versus flutes nowadays that are more mass-produced, machine-cut, and machine-made. And some of them are hand-finished, which is great. A lot of brands do that, where they essentially have the machines, create the tubing, and then everything else is kind of done by hand. The extruding of the tone holes, maybe a generous or a gentle cut of the head joint to achieve more of a little bit more of a clearer sound. The flutes back then were more or less handmade. My understanding about the Deford in particular was Mr. Deford actually would cut the head joints himself, and I think this one was one of the last examples that he personally, looked after and whatnot. And so one of the things that people need to understand is flutes back then were definitely made for more artistic driven pursuits. And this particular flute is I feel like it's, in terms of feel, it's a little bit more closer to a professional flute. I think the springs on this one are either stainless steel or white gold, and then these one are beryllium copper, which are kind of found on more student line flutes. So the tension of the mechanism a little bit more stiff, and this one is definitely lighter, closer to what you get on a professional flute. I think when it comes to my personal taste, I love the freedom that I get from this particular flute. Right. Let's try that. Both flutes, I think, are great. I feel like it's so hard because I love the sound of the 80B because it's so rich and lots of great dark overtones. Whereas the 10B kind of favors more the lighter overtones, the upper harmonic series, and it does. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that it is a thin wall flute. And just playing that excerpt, Dvorak is one of my favorite composers. Especially his Eighth Symphony is just delicious, and so his Seventh and more or less the Ninth. But I think that when it comes to playing stuff that's technical and requires lots of upper register movement, I think the 10B wins. Or yes, the 10B wins in that regard. But when it's like rich, dark, slower, more elegant passages, then the 80B definitely takes the cake. Just to see how it does when it comes to wiggling around, I'm going to play the opening to Daphnis, the second suite. Let's see. So both have, their qualities of which one is better, which one, they both have wonderful strengths and weaknesses. I feel like there's certain things that the 10B can take away from the 80B, and there's definitely things in the 80B that can take away from the 10B. But I also think that it's also a matter of adjustment. They probably need, if I pick one of them, I definitely want them to adjust the flute a little bit just so I can get the maximum playability and color and sound. But I really want to know what people viewing this video are going to think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I have until about Sunday to make a choice on which flute I want to get. If none of these flutes fit my preference, then I am going to choose another 2 flutes and we'll take it from there. But in the meantime, remember to keep supporting your local artists and musicians, and give us some love right now during this COVID and the shutdown, and continue to be lovely, and I will see you guys next time.